You wake up each morning feeling defeated before the day even begins, watching others succeed while you struggle to find your inner strength and purpose. Every challenge feels overwhelming. Every setback confirms your doubts, and you wonder if you'll ever develop the warrior spirit needed to conquer your goals and transform your life. I am Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest swordsman who ever lived, undefeated in over 60 duels, and the author of The Book of Five Rings. Through decades of solitary training and mortal combat, I discovered that true victory begins not with the sword, but with the mind you forge each morning. The warrior principles I'll share will transform how you approach each day, giving you the unshakable inner strength to face any challenge with the heart of a samurai. What worked on ancient battlefields works in modern life. The way of the warrior transcends time and circumstance. But first, like this video, subscribe for more timeless wisdom and comment below where you're watching from. I want to know which corner of the world is ready for warrior transformation. I was 7 years old when my father died, leaving me alone in a world that had no patience for orphans. Most children would have sought shelter, comfort, the safety of a master's school. But even then, something in my spirit rejected the easy path. I picked up a wooden sword, a simple bokken, and made a choice that would define my entire existence. I would walk the path alone. This wooden sword became more than a weapon. It became my teacher, my companion, my truth. While other young samurai trained in crowded dojos, repeating movements their masters had learned from their masters, I ventured into the wilderness with only this simple piece of carved wood. I struck trees until my hands bled. I practiced forms until I collapsed from exhaustion. I fought my own shadow until I understood that my greatest enemy and my greatest ally was myself. The conventional wisdom said I needed a sensei, a school, a lineage, but I discovered something that would shock the traditional masters. Strength comes from within, not from others. Every morning, I would wake before dawn and train with my bokken, developing techniques that no school had ever taught, because they came from my own understanding of combat, my own relationship with the way of the sword. I abandoned the traditional schools not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. I realized that to become truly invincible, I could not rely on borrowed wisdom or inherited techniques. I had to forge my own path through trial, error, pain, and solitary discovery. The lone wolf must develop senses that pack animals never need, the ability to read danger in every shadow, to find strength when no help is coming, to make decisions when no advisor stands beside you. This is why you must begin each day as a lone wolf, even if you're surrounded by people. Your strength must come from your own daily discipline, your own morning ritual, your own commitment to excellence. Others may support you, but they cannot build your character. Others may encourage you, but they cannot fight your battles. Others may believe in you, but they cannot give you the unshakable confidence that comes only from knowing you have tested yourself and emerged victorious. Every morning when you wake, remember that wooden sword, simple, unadorned, but deadly in the hands of one who has mastered it through solitary dedication. Your daily practices, your physical training, your mental preparation, your spiritual discipline, these are your bokken. Use them faithfully, and you will develop a power that no one can take from you because it comes from within. The path of the lone wolf is not about isolation. It's about self-reliance. It's about becoming so strong, so skilled, so disciplined, that when you do choose to work with others, you bring strength rather than weakness to the relationship. The warrior who has walked alone knows how to stand when others fall, how to continue when others quit, how to find the way when others are lost. I was 13 years old when I faced my first real duel, and I nearly lost before I even drew my sword. Not because my opponent was skilled, though he was, but because I was fighting two battles, one with him and one with the terror in my own heart. Arima Kihei was a respected samurai, seasoned in combat, confident in his abilities. As we faced each other in the morning mist, I felt my knees tremble. My grip on the wooden sword grew slippery with sweat, my mind filled with images of death, of failure, of shame that would follow me beyond the grave. But in that moment of pure terror, I discovered something that would change everything. The first victory must always be won within yourself. I closed my eyes and took 3 deep breaths. I imagined myself as water, fluid, adaptable, finding the path of least resistance, around obstacles. I visualized the fight not as a battle against an enemy, but as a dance with destiny. Most importantly, I accepted the possibility of death, and in accepting it, I freed myself from the fear of it. When I opened my eyes, everything had changed. My hands were steady, my mind was clear, my heart beat with rhythm, not panic. Kihei's confident smile flickered for just a moment. He had seen the transformation in my posture, in my eyes, in the very air around me. The actual fight lasted less than 30 seconds, but the victory had been won in those 3 breaths when I conquered myself. From that day forward, I developed what I call the mirror of self-reflection, a daily morning practice of honest self-examination that became the foundation of all my strength. Every morning before I face the world, I face myself. I look into the mirror of my mind and ask 3 questions. What fears am I carrying? What truths am I avoiding? What excuses am I making? This morning ritual is not about self-criticism or self-doubt. It is about self-mastery. When you know your own weaknesses, they cannot surprise you in battle. When you acknowledge your fears, they lose their power to control you. When you stop making excuses, you stop limiting your potential. I have met warriors who could cut down 10 men, but could not cut down their own pride. I have known generals who could conquer cities, but could not conquer their own anger. I have seen masters of technique who remained slaves to their own inner demons. The warrior who cannot defeat himself will eventually be defeated by others. But the warrior who wins the daily battle within himself becomes unconquerable, not because he is without weakness, but because he knows his weaknesses so well that he can compensate for them. Your morning meditation should be like standing before a mirror that reflects not your physical appearance, but your spiritual condition. Look honestly at what you see. Do not turn away from what is uncomfortable or inconvenient. The warrior's path demands truth, especially the truth about yourself. In this practice, you will discover that your greatest enemy has always been your own untrained mind, your fears, your doubts, your limiting beliefs, your comfortable lies. But you will also discover that your greatest ally is your disciplined will, trained through daily practice to choose courage over comfort, truth over convenience, growth over stagnation. When you begin each day by conquering yourself, you approach every challenge from a position of strength. You do not need to defeat others to prove your worth. You have already proven it to the only judge that truly matters, yourself. After my victory over Arima Kihei, I could have basked in the glory, accepted students, started a school. Instead, I disappeared into the mountains for 3 years of the most brutal self-training any warrior has ever endured. I chose suffering over comfort because I understood a truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Discipline is the forge that transforms ordinary metal into unbreakable steel. In those mountains, I created what I call the 5 pillars of warrior. Discipline, practices so demanding that most would consider them impossible. But impossibility is just another word for untested possibility. The first pillar was physical conditioning beyond the limits of normal human endurance. I would wake before dawn and run barefoot through mountain trails until my feet bled. Then, I would practice sword forms for 4 hours without rest. Then I would carry massive stones up steep slopes until my muscles screamed for mercy. I did this every single day, regardless of weather, regardless of injury, regardless of how my body begged me to stop. The second pillar was mental training. Through extreme discomfort, I would sit in meditation on frozen rocks during winter storms, training my mind to remain calm while my body suffered. I would fast for days while maintaining intense physical training, teaching myself that hunger is just another sensation that cannot defeat a disciplined will. I practiced sword techniques while standing in ice-cold waterfalls, learning to maintain perfect form even when every nerve in my body demanded that I flee. The third pillar was emotional mastery through deliberate exposure to fear. I would sleep, alone in forests known to be haunted, not because I believed in ghosts, but because fear itself was my training partner. I would deliberately seek out the most dangerous situations, crossing raging rivers, climbing unstable cliffs, camping where wild animals hunted, to teach myself that courage is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. The fourth pillar was intellectual discipline through constant learning. Even in isolation, I studied everything I could about strategy, philosophy, art, and human nature. I read by firelight until my eyes burned. I memorized entire texts about warfare and wisdom. I analyzed every technique I knew and invented new ones through pure mental effort. I understood that the warrior's mind must be as sharp as his sword. The fifth pillar was spiritual discipline through connection with something greater than myself. I spent hours in communion with nature, understanding that I was part of a larger pattern, a greater way. I practiced gratitude for my suffering because it was making me stronger. I developed humility before the vast forces of the universe while simultaneously cultivating unshakable confidence in my own abilities. These 5 pillars became the foundation of everything I achieved. They transformed me from a talented boy into an invincible warrior. But more importantly, they taught me that comfort is the enemy of greatness. Most people wake up each morning seeking comfort. They want easy work, quick results, immediate pleasure. They avoid discomfort like it's poison, not understanding that discomfort is actually medicine, the medicine that cures weakness, fear, and mediocrity. Every morning you must choose between 2 paths: the path of comfort that leads to weakness, or the path of discipline that leads to strength. The choice you make in those first moments after waking will determine whether you spend the day becoming stronger or becoming weaker. There is no middle ground. I want you to understand that discipline is not punishment. It is freedom. When you discipline your body through physical training, you free yourself from the tyranny of laziness and weakness. When you discipline your mind through mental training, you free yourself from the chaos of uncontrolled thoughts and emotions. When you discipline your spirit through spiritual practice, you free yourself from the small concerns that trap most people in lives of quiet desperation. The warrior's morning must include deliberate discomfort, not suffering for its own sake, but challenges that forge character. Whether it's cold showers, intense exercise, difficult reading, or confronting tasks you've been avoiding, you must deliberately choose the harder path. Your habits are either forging you into steel or allowing you to remain soft metal that bends under pressure. Every day you choose comfort over challenge, you become weaker. Every day you choose discipline over ease, you become stronger. The accumulated effect of these daily choices will determine whether you become a warrior or remain a victim of circumstance. Build your own 5 pillars. Choose physical practices that push your limits. Choose mental challenges that expand your capabilities. Choose emotional experiences that build courage. Choose intellectual pursuits that sharpen your mind. Choose spiritual disciplines that connect you to your highest purpose. The mountains taught me that the human spirit can endure and overcome anything if it is properly forged through discipline. Your daily practices are your forge. Use them wisely, and you will become unbreakable. My reputation grew with each duel I won, but what my opponents never understood was that I had already defeated them long before we crossed swords. While they prepared their techniques, I prepared my strategy. While they sharpened their blades, I sharpened my mind. While they practiced their attacks, I studied their weaknesses. Victory belonged to me because I learned to see 3 moves ahead while they could barely see 1. This ability to think strategically did not come naturally. It was forged through years of analyzing every aspect of combat and life as interconnected. Patterns. I discovered that whether you're facing an opponent with a sword or facing challenges in your daily existence, the same principles of strategic thinking apply. The first element of strategic thinking is what I call the elevated perspective. Before every duel, I would study my opponent from a distance, watching how he moved, how he held his sword, how he interacted with others. I observed his posture when he thought no one was watching, his facial expressions during conversation, the rhythm of his breathing when he was relaxed versus when he was tense. Most warriors focused only on sword technique, but I studied the entire human being. This same elevated perspective must guide your approach to each day. Before you dive into your tasks and responsibilities, step back and observe the larger patterns. What are the forces at work in your environment? What are the motivations of the people around you? What opportunities are others missing because they're too focused on immediate concerns? Strategic thinking begins with seeing the battlefield clearly before the battle begins. The second element is understanding the principle of indirect approach. In my duels, I rarely won through direct confrontation of strength against strength. Instead, I won by creating situations where my opponent's strength became his weakness. If he was aggressive, I used his aggression to unbalance him. If he was defensive, I used his defensiveness to trap him. If he was fast, I used his speed to make him overcommit. In your daily life, this means recognizing that the direct path is not always the best path. When you face a difficult person, don't meet their aggression with aggression. Redirect their energy to serve your purpose. When you encounter an obstacle, don't try to smash through it. Find the way around, over, or under it. That requires less effort and creates better results. The third element is the art of timing. I learned to recognize the moment when my opponent was mentally committed to one course of action and could not easily change direction. That moment of commitment was when he became vulnerable, because his mind was fixed on his plan while mine remained fluid and responsive. Every day presents these moments of opportunity, times when circumstances align in your favor, when other people are distracted or overcommitted, when the conditions are perfect for you to make your move. Most people miss these moments because they're not paying attention or because they're not prepared to act quickly when the opportunity appears. The fourth element is turning obstacles into advantages. In one famous duel, my opponent chose to fight with the sun at his back, thinking this would blind me. Instead, I used the sun's position to time my attack perfectly. When he raised his sword to strike, the sun's glare reflected off his blade, directly into his own eyes, blinding him at the crucial moment. Whatever challenges you face each morning, look for ways to transform them into advantages. The early hour that makes you tired can become the quiet time that gives you a head start on the day. The difficult person who frustrates you can become the training partner who makes you stronger. The obstacle that blocks your path can become the foundation that elevates you to a higher level. The fifth element is maintaining multiple options. I never entered a duel with only one plan because no plan survives contact with reality unchanged. I would prepare 3 or 4 different approaches and remain ready to shift between them based on how the situation developed. Your daily strategy should include multiple pathways to your goals. If your primary plan is blocked, you should already know your backup approach. If your backup approach fails, you should have a third option ready. Strategic thinking means being prepared for various scenarios, not just hoping that your first idea will work. The warrior who thinks strategically approaches each day like a general planning a campaign. You consider the terrain, your environment, and circumstances. You assess your forces, your energy, skills, and resources. You study your objectives, what you truly want to accomplish. You anticipate obstacles and opportunities. You plan your movements carefully and remain ready to adapt when conditions change. Most people stumble through their days reacting to whatever happens to them. The strategic warrior shapes what happens through careful planning and skillful execution. When you begin each morning with strategic thinking, you transform from a victim of circumstances into the architect of your destiny. In my book of 5 rings, I wrote about 5 elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and void. Most warriors could understand the first 4, but the 5th, the void, remained a mystery that few could grasp. Yet it was this understanding of emptiness that gave me my greatest advantage and became the source of my most profound strength. The void is not nothingness in the way most people think of emptiness. It is the space of infinite possibility, the pregnant silence from which all action springs, the clear mind that can perceive and respond without the clutter of preconceptions and fears. When I learned to embrace the void, I learned to fight from a place of perfect clarity and spontaneous response. I discovered this principle during a period of intense meditation in the mountains, when I had fasted for 7 days and spent each night sitting motionless under the stars. On the 7th night, something remarkable happened. My mind became completely empty, yet completely aware. I was nobody and everybody, nothing and everything. In that state of perfect emptiness, I understood that all my previous strategies and techniques had been limited by my attachment to fixed ideas about how things should be. When I returned to dueling after this experience, my opponents found me impossible to read or predict. They expected me to follow the patterns I had used before, but I no longer fought from memory or habit. I fought from emptiness, responding perfectly to whatever arose in each moment without being constrained by past experience or future expectations. This is what you must learn to cultivate each morning, the practice of emptying your mind completely before filling it with the day's activities and concerns. Most people wake up and immediately flood their consciousness with worries, plans, regrets, and distractions. They carry yesterday's problems into today and tomorrow's anxieties into this moment. Their minds become so cluttered with mental noise that they cannot hear the subtle signals of intuition or opportunity. The morning practice of embracing the void begins with sitting in complete stillness for at least 10 minutes. Not meditation with a focus or goal, but pure emptiness, letting go of all thoughts, all plans, all concerns, until your mind becomes like a perfectly still lake that reflects everything clearly while being disturbed by nothing. In this state of emptiness, you will discover that clarity naturally arises. Solutions to problems that seemed impossible will appear without effort. Creative insights will emerge without forcing. You will sense opportunities and dangers that your busy mind was too distracted to notice. The void is not the absence of intelligence. It is intelligence freed from the limitations of habitual thinking. I learned to apply this principle not just in meditation, but in action. When facing an opponent, I would empty my mind of all preconceptions about what he might do or what I should do. Instead of fighting according to a plan, I would respond spontaneously to whatever he presented, like water flowing around rocks. In a stream, this made me unpredictable and unstoppable because I was not locked into any fixed strategy that could be countered. In your daily life, this means learning to approach challenges without being attached to specific outcomes or methods. When you face a difficult situation, instead of immediately trying to solve it with your usual approaches, first empty your mind and see what fresh perspective emerges. Often, the solution that arises from emptiness is far more elegant and effective than anything you could have forced through conventional thinking. The void also teaches the power of letting go. I noticed that my most devastating defeats came when I was holding on to something. Anger from a previous insult, attachment to a particular technique, fear of losing my reputation. These attachments created mental and emotional weight that slowed my responses and clouded my judgment. When I learned to release all attachments and fight from complete freedom, I became truly invincible. Each morning, practice letting go of everything that happened yesterday and everything you hope will happen today. Release your grip on how you think things should be and open yourself to how they actually are. This is not passive acceptance, but active engagement from a place of inner freedom rather than inner compulsion. When you embrace the void, you discover that empty space is not weakness, but strength. The empty cup can be filled. The full cup cannot receive anything new. The empty mind can respond perfectly to any situation. The cluttered mind struggles with even simple challenges. The warrior who masters the void becomes like the eye of a hurricane, perfectly calm at the center while tremendous forces swirl around him. From this place of emptiness, all effective action springs. From this place of clarity, all wise decisions emerge. From this place of freedom, all true strength flows. Begin each day by returning to the void, and you will find that everything else, your work, your relationships, your challenges, becomes infinitely more manageable because you approach them from a place of unlimited possibility rather than limited thinking. When I first appeared at duels, wielding both the long sword and the short sword simultaneously, my opponents thought I was either brilliant or insane. Traditional swordsmanship demanded focus on a single blade, perfecting one weapon to the exclusion of all others. But I understood something that the masters of single sword schools had missed. True mastery comes not from perfecting one thing, but from harmonizing opposites. My two-sword technique was revolutionary, not because of its mechanical innovation, but because of its philosophical foundation. The long sword represented yang, aggressive, offensive, direct action. The short sword represented yin, defensive, responsive, subtle maneuvering. Together they created a dynamic balance that made me unpredictable and adaptable in ways that single sword fighters could never match. But the deeper lesson of the two-sword technique extends far beyond combat. It represents the warrior's approach to balancing all the opposing forces in life: strength and flexibility, confidence and humility, action and patience, independence and cooperation. Most people spend their lives fighting against these contradictions, trying to choose one side or the other. The warrior learns to embrace both sides and use their tension to create power. In my morning training, I would practice with both swords until my movements became completely fluid and natural. The challenge was not just physical coordination, but mental integration. My mind had to hold two different strategies simultaneously, one for offense, one for defense, while remaining ready to shift between them or combine them in unexpected ways. This training transformed my entire approach to problem-solving and decision-making. When you begin each day, you must learn to think like a two-sword warrior. You need aggressive energy to pursue your goals and tackle your challenges, but you also need defensive wisdom to protect your time, energy, and peace of mind. You need confidence to take action, but you also need humility to learn from mistakes and adapt when circumstances change. Most people make the mistake of trying to be either aggressive or passive, either confident or humble, either focused on work or focused on relationships. They create unnecessary inner conflict by believing they must choose between opposing qualities. The two-sword warrior understands that true power comes from integrating opposites, not from choosing sides. I learned to apply this principle in every aspect of my life. When dealing with people, I would be simultaneously firm and flexible. Firm in my principles, but flexible in my methods. When pursuing goals, I would be both patient and urgent. Patient with the process, but urgent about taking daily action. When facing challenges, I would be both accepting and resistant, accepting what I could not change, but actively resisting anything that tried to diminish my spirit. In your daily work, practice the two-sword approach by balancing competing priorities. Instead of seeing them as conflicts, be both creative and practical, both innovative and reliable, both independent and collaborative. Don't waste energy trying to be perfectly consistent. Learn to be dynamically balanced instead. The morning ritual of the two-sword warrior includes practicing physical coordination between different parts of your body, but more importantly, it includes practicing mental coordination between different aspects of your personality. Spend time acknowledging both your strengths and your weaknesses, both your ambitions and your fears, both your need for achievement and your need for peace. I discovered that when I stopped trying to eliminate my contradictions and started learning to harmonize them, I became far more effective in everything I attempted. My aggression became more intelligent because it was balanced by defensive awareness. My confidence became more grounded because it was balanced by realistic humility. My independence became more powerful because it was balanced by strategic cooperation. The two-sword technique also taught me about rhythm and timing in a new way. With a single sword, you create one rhythm. With two swords, you can create multiple rhythms simultaneously, confusing your opponent and creating openings that would be impossible with single weapon fighting. In life, this means learning to operate on multiple timelines simultaneously. Some goals that you pursue with daily urgency, others that you develop with patient persistence over months or years. When you master the two-sword approach to living, you become unpredictable to your competitors and adaptable to changing circumstances. You can be gentle when gentleness serves your purpose, and fierce when fierceness is required. You can be a leader when leadership is needed, and a follower when following serves the greater good. The warrior who fights with two swords must develop perfect ambidexterity, equal skill with both hands. In life, this means developing equal facility with seemingly opposite approaches. Learn to be equally comfortable with speaking and listening, with giving and receiving, with planning and improvising, with solitude and social interaction. Begin each morning by consciously embracing the contradictions within yourself instead of trying to resolve them. Your complexity is not a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be orchestrated. Like a master musician playing a complex piece with both hands, you can create harmonies in your life that single-minded people cannot achieve. In all my years of combat, I learned that victory belonged not to the fastest warrior or the strongest, but to the one who understood timing. There is a rhythm to everything, to your opponent's breathing, to the flow of a battle, to the rise and fall of opportunities in life. The warrior who can feel this rhythm and move in harmony with it becomes almost supernatural in his effectiveness. I discovered this truth during a duel with a master swordsman whose speed was legendary. For the first few minutes of our encounter, I was completely outmatched. His blade moved like lightning, and I could barely defend myself. But instead of trying to match his speed, I began to listen, not just with my ears, but with my entire being to the rhythm of his attacks. Every fighter, no matter how skilled, develops patterns. There is always a moment between attacks when the body must reset, when the mind must choose the next move, when the spirit must gather itself for the next assault. In that tiny pause, lasting no more than a heartbeat, the fastest warrior becomes vulnerable to the one who understands timing. I stopped trying to be faster than him and started trying to be more rhythmically aware. I felt the pattern of his breathing, the cadence of his footwork, the subtle hesitation before each major technique. When I finally struck, it was not with superior speed, but with perfect timing. My attack landed in the exact moment when his rhythm left him exposed. This principle of timing governs everything in your daily life. There are moments when people are open to new ideas and moments when they are closed. There are times when your energy is naturally high and times when it naturally ebbs. There are periods when circumstances align in your favor and periods when everything seems to work against you. The warrior's morning practice must include developing sensitivity to these natural rhythms. Most people fight against the rhythms of life, trying to force productivity when their energy is low, pushing for results when the timing is wrong, or remaining passive when opportunities are ripe for action. This creates unnecessary struggle and reduces effectiveness. I learned to recognize my own internal rhythms, the times of day when my mind was sharpest, the seasons when my body felt strongest, the circumstances that brought out my best performance. I also learned to recognize the rhythms of others when they were most receptive to influence, when they were most likely to make mistakes, when they were gathering energy for their own major moves. Begin each morning by tuning into the rhythm of your own energy. Some days you will wake feeling like a rushing river, ready for intense action and bold initiatives. Other days you will wake feeling like a deep lake, better suited for reflection, planning, and steady progress. Instead of forcing yourself into the same pattern every day, learn to adjust your approach based on your natural rhythm. The art of timing also involves understanding that patience is not passive waiting. It is active preparation, like a cat. Watching a mouse, the warrior maintains perfect readiness while waiting for the exactly right moment to strike. This requires tremendous discipline because our culture teaches us to be constantly busy, constantly moving, constantly producing. Results: I spent hours in meditation learning to distinguish between productive action and mere activity. Much of what people call hard work is actually nervous energy being dissipated without strategic purpose. The warrior learns to conserve energy during the wrong times so that maximum force can be applied during the right moments. In your relationships, timing determines whether your words heal or wound, whether your offers are accepted or rejected, whether your influence inspires or alienates. Learn to sense when someone is ready to hear difficult truths and when they need gentle encouragement. Recognize when to push forward with your agenda and when to step back and let others lead. In your career, timing affects whether your ideas are embraced or dismissed, whether your efforts are noticed or ignored, whether your initiatives succeed or fail. The same proposal presented at the wrong time will be rejected, while a mediocre idea presented at the perfect moment will be celebrated. The warrior learns to read the larger rhythms of organizations, markets, and social movements. The natural world provided my greatest teacher in understanding rhythm. I observed how trees know when to shed their leaves and when to bloom, how animals know when to hunt and when to rest, how rivers know when to flow gently and when to rage. Everything in nature follows rhythms that are both predictable and subtly variable. Your daily practice should include moments of complete stillness, when you simply listen to the rhythms around you, the rhythm of your breathing, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the rhythm of your thoughts and emotions. As you become more sensitive to these internal rhythms, you will naturally become more sensitive to the external rhythms that govern success and failure in all your endeavors. The master of timing never rushes and never delays. Like water flowing downhill, he moves with natural inevitability, arriving at his destination not through force, but through perfect alignment with the way things naturally want to unfold. This is the deepest secret of effortless power, not fighting against the rhythm of life, but dancing with it. High in the mountains during my years of solitary training, I spent countless hours observing eagles. These magnificent predators possessed a quality that made them masters of their domain, not just their physical prowess, but their extraordinary vision. An eagle can spot movement from miles away, distinguish between threat and opportunity in an instant, and maintain perfect awareness of everything in their territory while focusing intently on their chosen target. I realized that this elevated perception was exactly what separated great warriors from merely skilled fighters. Most swordsmen saw only their immediate opponent, focusing so intently on the sword in front of them that they missed the larger patterns that determined victory or defeat. I trained myself to develop what I call the eagle's perspective, the ability to see everything while missing nothing. This training began with a simple but demanding exercise. I would position myself on a mountaintop and practice observing the entire landscape while simultaneously tracking specific details: a bird's flight pattern, the movement of clouds, the way light shifted across valleys. Gradually, I learned to maintain this dual awareness, broad perception combined with precise focus. When I brought this skill to combat, my opponents found me impossible to surprise or outmaneuver. While they concentrated on their immediate attacks, I was aware of their breathing, their balance, their emotional state, the positioning of their feet, the angle of their shoulders, and dozens of other subtle indicators that revealed their intentions before they acted. But the eagle's vision serves far greater purposes than winning duels. In your daily life, this same quality of perception can transform your effectiveness in every situation. Most people move through their days with tunnel vision, seeing only their immediate tasks and concerns while missing the opportunities, threats, and patterns that surround them. The warrior's morning practice must include developing this expanded awareness. Begin each day by taking time to observe your environment with the intensity of an eagle surveying its territory. Notice not just what is obvious, but what is subtle: the energy in your home, the quality of light, the sounds that most people never hear, the details that others overlook. When you enter any room, practice the eagle scan. Quickly assess everything and everyone present while appearing relaxed and natural. Notice who holds real power beyond formal titles, who is aligned with whom, what tensions exist beneath polite surfaces, where opportunities might be hidden. This is not paranoia or manipulation, but practical awareness that allows you to navigate complex situations with wisdom. I learned to read people like an eagle reads wind currents and weather patterns. Human beings constantly broadcast information about their true thoughts, feelings, and intentions through micro-expressions, body language, tone of voice, and energy. Most people are unconsciously transmitting far more than they realize, but few have developed the perception to receive these signals. The eyes of the eagle see through deception, not through cynicism, but through clarity. When someone tells you one thing while their body language says another, the trained observer notices the contradiction without judgment. When a situation appears one way on the surface but feels different underneath, the warrior trusts the deeper perception. This skill requires practice and patience. Start by choosing one person during each conversation and practice reading their complete communication, not just their words, but their emotions, their level of confidence, their hidden concerns, their true interests. Do this with curiosity, not judgment. The goal is understanding, not advantage. In business and career situations, the eagle's vision allows you to see the real dynamics at play. While others focus on the official agenda, you notice who defers to whom, where the actual decision-making power lies, what unspoken concerns are driving the conversation, and where the real opportunities exist. The eagle also understands the importance of positioning. From the right vantage point, even a small shift in perspective can reveal entirely new possibilities. In my duels, I learned that controlling the high ground, the light, and the angles of approach often mattered more than raw technique. The same principle applies to every challenge you face. Each morning, practice finding elevated perspectives on your current situations. Instead of remaining trapped in the details of your immediate concerns, step back mentally and observe the larger patterns. What forces are at work beyond what you can see directly? What trends are developing that others haven't noticed yet? Where are the leverage points that could create disproportionate results? The eagle never loses sight of the big picture while hunting specific prey. You must learn to maintain awareness of long-term goals in larger contexts while dealing with immediate tasks and responsibilities. This prevents you from winning battles while losing wars, or becoming so focused on urgent matters that you neglect what is truly important. Physical training for the eagle's vision includes exercises that expand your peripheral awareness, improve your ability to track multiple moving objects simultaneously, and develop the capacity to shift rapidly between distant and close focus. But mental training is equally important, learning to hold multiple perspectives simultaneously, to see situations from various angles, to notice patterns that others miss. The warrior with eagle's vision becomes nearly impossible to surprise, deceive, or outmaneuver because he sees what is actually happening rather than what he expects to see or what others want him to see. From this place of clear perception, all wise action naturally flows. There came a time in my journey when I faced an opponent who terrified me more than any other, not because of his skill with the sword, but because of his reputation for psychological warfare. Sasaki Kojiro was known for destroying his enemies' minds before the battle even began, filling them with such doubt and fear that they defeated themselves. As our confrontation approached, I discovered that my greatest battle would not be with him, but with the demons of fear and doubt that he awakened within me. For weeks before our duel, I was tormented by visions of failure, humiliation, and death. I would wake in cold sweats, imagining every way the fight could go wrong. My confidence, built through years of victory, began to crumble under the weight of what-if scenarios that my mind generated endlessly. I realized that if I allowed these inner enemies to remain unchallenged, Kojiro would defeat me before he ever drew his sword. This crisis forced me to understand something profound about the nature of fear and doubt. They are not emotions to be eliminated, but forces to be transformed. The warrior who tries to destroy fear will fail, because fear serves an essential function. It alerts us to danger and sharpens our awareness. The warrior who tries to ignore doubt will also fail, because doubt prevents overconfidence and keeps us humble. The key is not elimination, but mastery. I developed what I call the transformation technique, turning fear into focused energy and doubt into careful preparation. Instead of fighting against the fear of death, I used it to make me more alive, more present, more aware of every detail that could determine the outcome. Instead of being paralyzed by doubt about my abilities, I used it to identify areas where I could improve and to prepare more thoroughly than ever before. The morning practice of conquering fear begins with acknowledgement, not denial. When you wake feeling afraid or doubtful about the challenges ahead, resist the temptation to push these feelings away or pretend they don't exist. Instead, greet them like training partners who have come to make you stronger. I learned to have actual conversations with my fears and doubts. I would sit in meditation and ask fear, "What are you trying to teach me? What danger are you warning me about that I need to address?" Fear often contains valuable information about real risks that need practical solutions. When you listen to fear with wisdom rather than react to it with panic, it becomes an advisor rather than an enemy. Similarly, I would ask doubt, "What weaknesses are you revealing that I need to strengthen? What assumptions am I making that need to be questioned?" Doubt, when properly understood, is the quality that prevents arrogance and motivates continuous improvement. The warrior who doubts nothing learns nothing. The key transformation happens when you change your relationship with these experiences. Instead of seeing fear as evidence that you are weak, see it as evidence that you are about to grow stronger. Instead of seeing doubt as proof that you will fail, see it as motivation to prepare more thoroughly. Fear and doubt become problems only when you interpret them as signs to retreat rather than signals to advance more carefully. I practiced a daily exercise I called feeding the demons. Each morning, I would deliberately imagine the worst possible outcomes of my current challenges, not to torment myself, but to rob these scenarios of their power to surprise or paralyze me. When you have already faced your greatest fears in your imagination and developed responses to them, the actual challenges become much more manageable. This practice also revealed that most fears are far worse in anticipation than in reality. The mind has a tendency to amplify dangers and minimize your capacity to handle them. By facing fears directly in a controlled setting, you discover that you are stronger and more resourceful than your anxious thoughts suggest. Physical practices are essential for transforming fear and doubt. I would deliberately place myself in uncomfortable and slightly dangerous situations, crossing swollen rivers, climbing unstable rocks, sleeping in places where wild animals might appear. Each time I faced physical fear and overcame it, my confidence in handling psychological fear grew stronger. Your daily practice should include regular challenges that push the boundaries of your comfort zone, not reckless dangers, but calculated risks that require you to act despite feeling afraid. Each small victory over fear builds what I call fear immunity, not the absence of fear, but the ability to function effectively while feeling afraid. I also discovered the power of transforming fear into aggression and doubt into determination. When fear tried to make me passive, I used its energy to become more active in my preparation. When doubt tried to make me hesitant, I used its energy to become more decisive in my actions. The same energy that could paralyze me could also empower me depending on how I directed it. The morning of my duel with Kojiro, I felt both afraid and confident, both doubtful and certain. This was not contradiction, but integration. I had learned to hold these opposing forces in dynamic tension rather than trying to resolve them. Fear kept me sharp, while confidence kept me bold. Doubt kept me prepared, while certainty kept me committed. When you master this relationship with fear and doubt, you become truly dangerous to any opponent and truly capable in any situation. You approach challenges with the humility that comes from acknowledging real dangers and the courage that comes from knowing you have the power to face whatever arises. This combination makes you both wise and fearless, the warrior's ideal state of mind. During my wandering years, I encountered a Zen master who challenged me to a different kind of duel. "You claim to be undefeated," he said, "but can you remain unmoved by praise or criticism, success or failure, pleasure or pain?" He spent the next 3 days testing my mental fortitude in ways that no sword could match, and I discovered that my mind, for all its tactical brilliance, was still vulnerable to disturbance. This humbling experience led me to develop what became my most powerful weapon, the immovable mind. This is not a mind that refuses to change or adapt, but a mind that maintains its essential stability regardless of external circumstances. Like a mountain that remains unchanged whether storms rage around it or gentle breezes caress it, the immovable mind provides an unshakable foundation for all action. The Zen master showed me that most people's minds are like leaves in the wind, constantly blown about by whatever happens to them. Good news makes them elated. Bad news makes them depressed. Praise makes them arrogant. Criticism makes them insecure. This emotional reactivity not only creates unnecessary suffering, but also clouds judgment and impairs performance when clarity is most needed. I began training my mind like I had trained my body, through deliberate exposure to increasingly challenging conditions. I would practice maintaining perfect equanimity while people insulted me, praised me, threatened me, or tried to seduce me with offers of wealth and position. The goal was not to become emotionless, but to become emotionally stable. The morning practice of building an immovable mind begins with what I call the stability meditation. Sit in perfect stillness and imagine various scenarios that normally would disturb your peace: receiving devastating news, being publicly humiliated, losing everything you value, or achieving your greatest dreams. Practice maintaining the same quality of calm awareness regardless of which scenario you contemplate. This is not about becoming indifferent or apathetic. The immovable mind feels everything but is moved by nothing. It experiences joy without being intoxicated by it, feels sadness without being crushed by it, acknowledges anger without being controlled by it. This emotional mastery provides tremendous practical advantages in every area of life. In negotiations, the person with the most emotional stability usually prevails because they can think clearly while others are reactive. In crises, the immovable mind can assess situations objectively and make wise decisions while others panic. In relationships, emotional stability creates trust and respect because people know you will not be thrown off balance by normal human dramas. I learned to distinguish between my core self and my circumstances. My circumstances could change dramatically. I could be wealthy or poor, famous or unknown, healthy or injured, but my essential nature remained constant. This understanding liberated me from the exhausting cycle of trying to control external conditions and allowed me to focus my energy on what I could actually control, my responses. The development of an immovable mind requires understanding what I call the 3 levels of stability. The first level is physical stability, training your body to remain relaxed and balanced regardless of external pressures. The second level is emotional stability, learning to maintain equanimity through all emotional weather. The third level is spiritual stability, connecting with something deeper than your personality that cannot be threatened by any worldly circumstance. Physical practices for building mental immobility include standing meditation in uncomfortable positions, maintaining perfect posture while people try to distract or provoke you, and continuing important tasks despite noise, interruption, or discomfort. These exercises teach your nervous system that external conditions do not determine internal states. I practiced what I called insult training, where I would ask trusted friends to criticize me harshly while I maintained perfect composure. This was not masochism, but practical preparation for the reality that success attracts criticism, and leadership requires the ability to remain centered while under attack. The warrior who can be destabilized by words will eventually be defeated by someone who understands this weakness. The immovable mind also requires letting go of the need for others' approval or recognition. When your stability depends on external validation, you become a puppet whose strings can be pulled by anyone who understands your need. True strength comes from internal validation, knowing that you have lived according to your principles, regardless of how others respond. In my later duels, opponents often tried to psychologically unbalance me before fighting began. They would boast about their abilities, threaten terrible consequences if I won, or try to seduce me with offers to join their schools. None of these tactics succeeded because my mind had become like a perfectly balanced stone that could not be toppled by any external force. This mental stability also enhanced my combat effectiveness. When your mind is unmoved by fear, anger, or excitement, your perception becomes crystal clear and your responses become lightning fast. You see openings that agitated minds miss and execute techniques with precision that emotional fighters cannot match. The morning warrior builds immobility not through rigidity, but through deep rootedness. Like a tree with roots extending far underground, you develop such a strong foundation that surface storms cannot shake your essential stability. This allows you to be flexible in your methods while remaining unmovable in your principles. Daily practice should include deliberately exposing yourself to minor irritations and maintaining perfect composure. Whether it's dealing with difficult people, handling unexpected setbacks, or receiving good or bad news, use every experience as training for developing unshakable mental stability. When you achieve the immovable mind, you become truly free. Not free from challenge or difficulty, but free from being controlled by external circumstances. From this place of inner stability, you can respond to any situation with wisdom rather than react with emotion, making you both more effective and more peaceful. The body is the warrior's first and most faithful weapon, yet most people treat it with less care than they give their tools or possessions. During my years of mountain training, I discovered that physical mastery was not just about strength or speed, but about developing a partnership between mind and body so intimate that they functioned as a single, perfectly coordinated unit. My daily training regimen was brutal by any standard. I would rise before dawn and begin with exercises that pushed every muscle, joint, and system to its limits. But this was not mindless physical torture. Every movement was performed with complete attention. Every exercise was designed to build not just strength, but awareness, not just endurance, but energy. I learned that the body has its own intelligence, far older and often wiser than the thinking mind. When I trained with complete presence, my body would teach me things that no master could explain: how to move with maximum efficiency, how to generate power from stillness, how to recover energy, even while expending it. The key was listening to the body's wisdom rather than imposing my mental will upon it. The morning warrior must begin each day by awakening the body completely. Most people stumble through their mornings half asleep, drinking caffeine to artificially stimulate alertness, while their bodies remain sluggish and unresponsive. This creates a disconnect between mind and body that persists throughout the day, reducing effectiveness and increasing the likelihood of injury, illness, and burnout. My morning physical practice included what I called the 5 foundations of warrior energy. The first foundation was breath mastery, learning to breathe deeply, completely, and consciously. Shallow breathing creates anxiety and fatigue, while deep breathing generates calm alertness and sustained energy. I would begin each morning with breathing exercises that oxygenated every cell and activated my nervous system for optimal performance. The second foundation was spinal alignment and core stability. The spine is the central channel through which all energy flows in the body. When the spine is properly aligned and the core muscles are strong and balanced, energy moves freely and power can be generated efficiently. I practiced exercises that strengthened my core from the deepest layers outward, creating a foundation of stability that enhanced every other movement. The third foundation was joint mobility and muscular flexibility. Stiffness in any part of the body creates blockages in energy flow and increases vulnerability to injury. I dedicated significant time each morning to movements that maintained and improved my range of motion, ensuring that my body remained as fluid and adaptable as water. The fourth foundation was cardiovascular conditioning that built both power and endurance. The warrior must be capable of explosive action when necessary, but also sustained effort over long periods. I developed training methods that enhanced both anaerobic and aerobic capacity, creating a body that could respond appropriately to any physical demand. The fifth foundation was sensory awareness and coordination. I practiced exercises that heightened my ability to feel subtle changes in balance, detect movement in my peripheral vision, and coordinate complex movements without conscious thought. This neurological training was as important as muscular training because it enhanced the speed and accuracy of my responses. But physical mastery extends beyond formal exercise. The warrior treats every movement throughout the day as an opportunity for training. Walking becomes an exercise in grace and efficiency. Sitting becomes practice in maintaining perfect posture. Even eating becomes training in mindful awareness and proper nutrition. I discovered that the body is not just a vehicle for the mind, but a source of intelligence and energy that can enhance mental and spiritual development. When the body is strong, flexible, and energetic, the mind naturally becomes clearer and more focused. When the body is disciplined through consistent training, the spirit naturally becomes more disciplined in all areas of life. The relationships between physical energy and mental clarity is profound. When your body is sluggish, your thinking becomes sluggish. When your body is tense, your mind becomes agitated. When your body is weak, your willpower becomes weak. But when your body is vital and energetic, your entire being operates at a higher level. Physical training also builds confidence in a way that mental practices alone cannot. When you know that your body can handle physical challenges, you naturally feel more capable of handling psychological and emotional challenges as well. The warrior who has pushed through physical barriers develops faith in his ability to push through any barrier. I learned to read my body's energy levels and rhythms as carefully as I read my opponent's intentions. Some days my body felt like a flowing river, ready for fluid, continuous movement. Other days it felt like solid earth, better suited for sustained, grounded effort. By adapting my training and activities to match my body's natural energy patterns, I maximized effectiveness while minimizing strain. The morning practice of physical mastery should include movements that awaken every system in your body, exercises that increase heart rate and breathing, stretches that mobilize joints and lengthen muscles, balance challenges that enhance coordination, and strength movements that activate your core power. This doesn't require hours of training, but it does require consistency and attention. Your body will become either your greatest ally or your greatest limitation, depending on how you treat it. The warrior who invests in physical mastery gains not just a stronger body, but a more disciplined mind, a more confident spirit, and access to energy reserves that can sustain peak performance throughout the longest and most challenging days. One of my most challenging opponents was a master who had studied my previous duels and developed specific counters to every technique I had ever used in public. When we finally faced each other, I discovered that everything I normally relied upon was useless. He had an answer for every attack, a defense for every strategy, a counter for every move that had brought me victory before. In that moment, I faced a choice that would define my understanding of true mastery. I could try to force my established techniques to work despite his preparations, or I could abandon everything I knew and fight from a place of pure adaptability. I chose adaptation, and in doing so, discovered that my greatest strength was not any particular skill, but my ability to become whatever the situation required. This principle of fluid adaptation became central to my way of life. Like water, which takes the shape of any container while never losing its essential nature, the warrior must be able to adapt to any circumstance while maintaining his core principles and identity. Rigidity, even in the form of masterful technique, becomes a weakness when circumstances change. I began studying adaptation in nature, how trees bend in storms rather than breaking, how animals change their behavior based on seasons and threats, how rivers find new paths when their old channels are blocked. Nature showed me that survival and success depend not on perfection of form, but on perfection of response to changing conditions. The morning practice of adaptation begins with mental flexibility training. Most people wake up with fixed ideas about how their day should unfold, what methods they will use to achieve their goals, and what responses they will give to various situations. This mental rigidity sets them up for frustration and failure when reality refuses to conform to their expectations. Instead, begin each morning by deliberately practicing mental adaptability. Plan your day with multiple contingencies. For every important goal, develop at least 3 different approaches. For every assumption you're making about how things will go, consider alternative scenarios and how you would respond to them. This mental preparation creates the flexibility needed to flow with circumstances rather than fight against them. I learned to distinguish between my core principles, which never changed, and my methods, which changed constantly. My principle of honest dealing remained absolute, but the way I communicated honesty varied dramatically depending on the person and situation. My commitment to continuous improvement never wavered, but the specific practices I used evolved based on what each day demanded. Physical adaptation requires developing multiple ways to accomplish the same objectives. In combat, I practiced generating power from dozens of different body positions, creating techniques that worked whether I was balanced or off balance, close to my opponent or far away, moving forward or retreating. This versatility meant that no matter what situation arose, I had options. In your daily life, this means developing multiple skills that can serve the same purpose. If your primary communication method fails, you should have backup approaches ready. If your preferred problem-solving strategy hits obstacles, you should be able to shift to alternative methods without losing momentum. The warrior with only one way of doing things is always vulnerable to circumstances that make that way impossible. I practiced what I called style switching, deliberately changing my approach in the middle of activities to develop comfort with transitions. During sword practice, I would shift from aggressive to defensive styles, from linear to circular movements, from fast to slow rhythms, training my mind and body to adapt instantly to new requirements. Emotional adaptation is equally important. Different situations call for different emotional energies. Sometimes you need fierce determination, sometimes gentle patience, sometimes playful creativity, sometimes serious focus. The warrior who can only operate in one emotional mode will be ineffective in situations that require a different energy. The art of adaptation also involves learning from every experience, especially failures and setbacks. When something doesn't work, the adaptable warrior doesn't just try harder with the same approach. He studies what went wrong, extracts lessons, and develops new methods based on what he learned. Failure becomes valuable feedback rather than proof of inadequacy. I discovered that the most adaptable fighters were also the most unpredictable, which gave them tremendous advantage. When opponents couldn't anticipate your responses based on your past behavior, they had to remain constantly alert and reactive rather than executing prepared strategies. Adaptability thus becomes a form of offensive weapon as well as defensive protection. The morning warrior should practice adaptation in small ways that prepare for larger challenges. Change your routine regularly, take different routes to work, eat different foods, interact with different types of people. Each variation in your normal patterns builds adaptability muscles that will serve you when major changes are forced upon you. But true adaptation requires more than just flexibility. It requires what I call responsive intelligence, the ability to read situations quickly and accurately, then modify your approach based on real-time feedback. This means paying attention to how your actions are being received and making adjustments before small problems become large failures. I learned to see change not as an enemy to be resisted, but as a dance partner to be embraced. When circumstances shifted, I would shift with them, maintaining my balance and effectiveness through fluid response rather than rigid resistance. This made me nearly impossible to corner or defeat because I could always find new ways to turn disadvantages into advantages. The warrior who masters adaptation becomes like flowing water, soft enough to yield when yielding serves his purpose, powerful enough to carve through stone when force is required, and always finding the most efficient path to his destination, regardless of what obstacles appear along the way. Through 61 duels, I faced not just different sword techniques, but different human natures, some driven by pride, others by fear, some calculating and methodical, others wild and unpredictable. I discovered that understanding human psychology was more valuable than mastering sword techniques, because once you could read the person wielding the weapon, you could predict and counter their every move. My greatest teacher in human nature was not a master or a book, but the life and death laboratory of combat itself. When a man believes he might die in the next few minutes, all pretense falls away, and his true character emerges. I learned to read these revelations of authentic self and apply that knowledge to understanding people in all circumstances, not just combat. I observed that every person operates from a core motivation that drives most of their behavior. Some are driven by the need for security, others by the hunger for recognition, others by the desire for control, others by the fear of being judged. Once you identify someone's primary driving force, their actions become predictable and their weaknesses become apparent. The morning practice of understanding human nature begins with studying yourself. Most people are mysteries to themselves, acting from unconscious motivations they never examine. The warrior must first understand his own drives, fears, and patterns before he can accurately read others. Spend time each morning in honest self-reflection, asking, what am I really seeking today? What fears are influencing my decisions? What patterns do I repeat regardless of circumstances? I developed what I call the 5 types of human nature that appear in combat and in life. The first type is the aggressor, driven by the need to dominate and control. These people attack first and ask questions later. They are dangerous when they have the initiative, but vulnerable when forced to respond to others' actions. The key to dealing with aggressors is to remain calm under their assault and redirect their force back against them. The second type is the defender, motivated primarily by fear and the need for safety. They rarely initiate action, preferring to wait and react to what others do. They are difficult to draw into open conflict, but also difficult to motivate toward bold action. The key to working with defenders is to make them feel safe while gradually building their confidence to take necessary risks. The third type is the calculator, driven by the need to understand and predict everything before acting. They gather information obsessively and plan extensively, but often miss opportunities while preparing. They are excellent at finding flaws in others' plans, but sometimes paralyzed by their own perfectionism. The key to influencing calculators is to provide logical reasoning and detailed information that supports your position. The fourth type is the performer, motivated by the need for approval and recognition. They are often skilled and charismatic, but their decisions are heavily influenced by how they think others will perceive them. They can be inspired to great efforts if they believe it will enhance their reputation, but they may also take foolish risks to impress others. The key to working with performers is to help them see how your goals align with their image concerns. The fifth type is the seeker, driven by the pursuit of meaning and purpose beyond material concerns. They are often the most dangerous opponents because they are willing to sacrifice everything for their beliefs, but they can also be the most loyal allies when their values align with yours. The key to connecting with seekers is to demonstrate how your objectives serve larger principles they care about. Most people are combinations of these types, with one usually dominant. By observing someone's behavior patterns, decision-making, style, and emotional reactions, you can identify their primary type and adjust your approach accordingly. This is not manipulation, but practical wisdom, understanding people well enough to communicate effectively and work together productively. I learned to watch for what I call tells, unconscious behaviors that reveal people's true thoughts and feelings. A slight tension in the shoulders might indicate suppressed anger. Changes in breathing patterns often signal fear or excitement. The direction of someone's gaze can reveal what they're really thinking about. Micro-expressions that flash across the face in a fraction of seconds show authentic emotions before conscious control can mask them. The warrior must also understand the rhythms of human energy and attention. Most people have predictable patterns of when they are most alert, most receptive to influence, most likely to make mistakes, and most vulnerable to pressure. By observing these patterns, you can time your important communications and requests for maximum effectiveness. But mastering human nature requires more than just reading people. It requires understanding what motivates groups and crowds. The dynamics that govern individual behavior change dramatically when people are part of larger groups. Fear spreads faster in crowds, but so does excitement. People will do things as part of a group that they would never do alone. Understanding these group dynamics is essential for anyone who seeks to lead or influence others. I discovered that the most effective way to influence people is not through force or manipulation, but by understanding their authentic needs and helping them meet those needs in ways that also serve your objectives. When people feel truly understood, they naturally become more cooperative and willing to work toward mutual goals. The morning warrior should practice observing one person each day with complete attention, watching their body language, listening to their tone of voice, noting their word choices, observing their energy patterns. Do this with genuine curiosity rather than judgment. The goal is understanding, not advantage. Physical positioning and movement also reveal important information about people's internal states and intentions. Confident people move differently than insecure people. Honest people have different posture than deceptive people. Aggressive people position themselves differently than peaceful people. Learning to read these physical tells provides valuable information that words often try to conceal. When you master human nature, you become far more effective in every relationship and interaction. You waste less energy trying to motivate people in ways that don't match their natural drives. You avoid unnecessary conflicts by understanding what people really fear. You build stronger alliances by appealing to what people genuinely value. Most importantly, you develop the wisdom to know when to engage with others and when to walk away from relationships that cannot serve mutual benefit. In my 20th year, I was offered a position of great wealth and comfort by a lord who sought to employ my sword in service of his political ambitions. The gold he offered could have secured my future, the position would have brought me respect and ease, but accepting would have required me to fight battles I did not believe in against people who had done me no wrong. I walked away from that offer, and in doing so discovered that my honor was worth more than my comfort. This moment crystallized my understanding that the warrior's greatest weapon is not his sword, but his character. A sword can be lost, broken, or taken away, but character, once forged through principled decisions, becomes an unbreakable foundation that supports all other strengths. Without honor, even the most skilled warrior is merely a dangerous tool in others' hands rather than a master of his own destiny. I developed what I call the warrior's code of honor, not a rigid set of rules imposed from outside, but a living system of principles that emerged from my deepest understanding of what creates strength, respect, and inner peace. These principles became the bedrock upon which I built everything else in my life. The first principle of the warrior's honor is absolute honesty with yourself and others. Most people live in various degrees of self-deception, telling themselves comfortable lies about their motivations, abilities, and circumstances. This internal dishonesty creates weakness because it prevents you from seeing reality clearly enough to respond effectively. The warrior commits to truth regardless of how uncomfortable it might be. I practiced daily truth-telling, starting with myself. Each morning, I would examine my actions from the previous day and acknowledge honestly what I had done well and what I had done poorly, what I had been motivated by courage and what had been motivated by fear, what I had done from principle, and what I had done from convenience. This practice built the muscle of honesty that served me in all other areas. The second principle is keeping your word absolutely. When you say you will do something, you create a sacred contract, not just with others, but with yourself. Every time you break your word, even in small matters, you weaken your own trust in your commitments and teach others that your promises have no real value. The warrior's word becomes his bond because he understands that reliability is the foundation of all respect and influence. I learned to be extremely careful about what commitments I made, but once made, I fulfilled them regardless of cost or inconvenience. This meant sometimes accepting significant personal sacrifice to honor agreements that had become burdensome. But each time I kept my word despite difficulty, my confidence in my own character grew stronger, and others learned that they could depend on me completely. The third principle is treating all people with dignity, regardless of their status or behavior toward you. The warrior's strength comes from his principles, not from his superiority over others. When you can maintain respectful behavior even toward those who disrespect you, you demonstrate that your character is self-determined, rather than reactive to external circumstances. This does not mean being passive or allowing others to abuse you. The warrior defends himself and others when necessary, but he does so from principle rather than from anger or wounded pride. He can be fierce in action while remaining honorable in motivation. The fourth principle is accepting responsibility for all consequences of your actions, both intended and unintended. Most people make excuses when their decisions lead to problems, blaming circumstances, other people, or bad luck. The warrior understands that taking full responsibility for outcomes even when they weren't entirely under his control, builds strength and wisdom while making excuses, builds weakness and ignorance. When one of my training exercises resulted in injury to a sparring partner, I could have blamed his inexperience or the accident of timing. Instead, I accepted full responsibility for not ensuring his safety and changed my training methods to prevent similar incidents. This responsibility made me a better teacher and earned me deeper respect from my students. The fifth principle is using your strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves rather than to exploit them. Power creates opportunities for both service and abuse. The warrior with true honor understands that strength is given to him not for his benefit alone, but for the benefit of others who need protection or guidance. I made it a practice to help those who could offer me nothing in return, teaching sword techniques to poor students who couldn't pay, protecting travelers from bandits when I gained nothing from their safety, standing up for people who were being treated unfairly by those with more power. These actions strengthened my character more than any victory in combat. The morning practice of honor begins with setting clear intentions about how you will conduct yourself throughout the day. Ask yourself, what principles will guide my decisions? Today, how will I respond if my integrity is tested? What commitments do I need to honor regardless of convenience? This preparation helps you act from principle rather than react from impulse when challenging situations arise. Honor also requires the courage to do what is right, even when it costs you something valuable. There will be times when honesty loses you money, when keeping your word creates hardship, when standing up for your principles makes you unpopular. The warrior accepts these costs because he understands that compromising his character is always more expensive than any material loss. Discovered that living honorably creates a kind of invincibility that has nothing to do with combat skills. When your conscience is clear and your principles are intact, you can face any challenge with confidence because you know that no external defeat can touch your essential worth. This inner strength radiates outward and commands respect from others, even from enemies. The warrior's honor is not about appearing virtuous to others, but about maintaining integrity with your deepest values. It requires constant vigilance, because opportunities to compromise your principles appear daily, often disguised as practical necessities or minor conveniences. But each time you choose honor over advantage, you build character that becomes your most reliable source of strength in any situation. As my hair began to gray and my reflexes slowed with age, I faced a challenge more complex than any opponent I had ever encountered: how to transform a lifetime of hard-won wisdom into something that could outlive my physical body. I realized that true victory was not just about winning battles, but about ensuring that the principles I had discovered would continue to serve others long after my sword arm could no longer swing. This awakening led me to understand that the warrior's ultimate duty is not just to perfect himself, but to elevate others. Every master who dies without passing on his knowledge takes valuable wisdom out of the world forever. Every warrior who achieves strength but keeps it to himself wastes an opportunity to multiply good in the world through teaching and mentorship. Began accepting students not because I needed the money or status, but because I recognized that teaching was the highest expression of mastery. When you can help another person avoid the mistakes you made and achieve insights you struggled years to discover, you extend your own impact far beyond what you could accomplish alone. But I quickly learned that teaching warrior principles is far more challenging than practicing them yourself. You can force yourself to endure discipline, but you cannot force discipline upon others. You can push yourself through fear, but you cannot push others through their fears. Teaching requires a completely different set of skills than personal mastery: patience instead of intensity, encouragement instead of self-criticism, adaptability instead of single-minded focus. The morning practice of the teaching warrior begins with asking yourself, what knowledge do I possess that could benefit others? What mistakes have I made that others could avoid? What insights have I gained that could accelerate someone else's progress? Even if you are not formally a teacher, you have opportunities every day to share wisdom with family, friends, colleagues, and strangers. I discovered that the act of teaching actually deepened my own understanding. When you must explain principles clearly enough for others to grasp them, you often discover aspects of those principles that you had never consciously recognized. When students ask questions that challenge your assumptions, you are forced to examine your beliefs more rigorously than you ever did in solitary practice. My first student was a young man whose technique was adequate, but whose spirit was weak. He had been defeated not by superior opponents, but by his own lack of confidence and commitment. I realized that teaching him sword techniques would be useless unless I first taught him how to forge warrior character. This led me to develop systematic methods for building inner strength that could be transmitted to others. The most important lesson I learned about teaching was that you cannot give someone else your strength. You can only show them how to develop their own. Too many teachers try to make their students into copies of themselves, but each person must find their own authentic way of expressing warrior principles. My job was not to create little versions of Musashi, but to help each student discover their own unique form of excellence. I also learned that the teacher's responsibility extends beyond just sharing knowledge to modeling the principles in daily life. Students learn more from watching how you handle challenges than from listening to your lectures about handling challenges. If your teaching contradicts your behavior, students will absorb the hypocrisy along with the lessons, weakening the impact of both. This realization forced me to examine my own conduct more carefully than ever before. Every decision I made, every interaction I had, every response to difficulty or success was being observed by those who looked to me for guidance. Teaching made me more accountable to my principles because I understood that my failures would become obstacles for others as well as myself. I developed what I call the 3 levels of teaching that apply whether you are formally instructing others or simply sharing wisdom through your example. The first level is technique, showing people specific methods and practices that can improve their skills. The second level is principle, helping people understand the deeper reasons behind effective techniques so they can adapt and create their own methods. The third level is spirit, inspiring people to want to grow and improve, to commit to the difficult path of self-mastery. The morning warrior should look for opportunities to teach at all 3 levels throughout each day. Share practical skills when you see someone struggling with tasks you have mastered. Explain the principles behind your success when people ask how you achieve your results. Most importantly, demonstrate through your energy and enthusiasm that the warrior's path leads to a more fulfilling way of life. I found that teaching required me to continue learning at an accelerated pace. Students would present me with problems I had never encountered, ask questions I had never considered, and challenge methods I had taken for granted. To serve them well, I had to constantly expand my own knowledge and deepen my own practice. The greatest reward of teaching came when I saw students eventually surpass their original limitations and become teachers themselves. When someone you have guided goes on to guide others, your influence multiplies exponentially. The wisdom you shared continues to spread through generations, creating positive change far beyond what you could have accomplished through individual action alone. But teaching also carries the sobering responsibility of ensuring that what you pass on is worthy of transmission. Poor teaching can create more harm than good by giving people false confidence in ineffective methods or by discouraging them from pursuing legitimate growth. The teacher must be scrupulously honest about the limits of his knowledge and careful not to present opinion as fact. I wrote the Book of 5 Rings near the end of my life as my final teaching, a way to share what I had learned with people I would never meet. Writing forced me to distill decades of experience into clear principles that could guide others on their own journeys of mastery. When you embrace your role as a teacher, whether formally or informally, you transform from someone who takes knowledge from the world to someone who adds knowledge to the world. This shift in identity from consumer to contributor creates a sense of purpose and significance that enriches every other aspect of life. In my final years, when my body could no longer endure the rigors of physical combat, I made a discovery that both humbled and liberated me. The warrior's journey never truly ends. Even after achieving undefeated status in dueling, mastering multiple arts, and gaining recognition as a strategic genius, I realized I was still a beginner in the deepest aspects of the way. This understanding came to me during a meditation in the mountains, where I had first learned to forge my character, decades earlier. As I sat in the same spot where I had once struggled with basic sword techniques, I felt both the vast distance I had traveled and the infinite path that still stretched ahead. The external battles that had once defined my life had given way to internal battles that were far more subtle but equally demanding. The eternal battle is not about achieving perfection and then maintaining it. It is about embracing the endless process of growth, refinement, and deeper understanding. Every day presents new opportunities to strengthen character, expand awareness, and refine skills. The warrior who thinks he has completed his training has actually begun his decline, because the moment you stop growing, you start dying. I discovered that mastery is not a destination, but a quality of engagement with whatever you are doing. The master carpenter approaches each piece of wood with the same curiosity and attention he brought to his first project, even after decades of experience. The master swordsman practices basic cuts with the same precision and awareness he cultivated as a student, even after winning countless battles. This principle of eternal practice became central to my daily routine. Even when I could no longer duel with swords, I continued to duel with my own limitations, complacency, and unconscious habits. Every morning brought opportunities to practice patience, courage, honesty, and wisdom in small but significant ways. The morning warrior must understand that each day is both a continuation of yesterday's progress and a fresh beginning with unlimited potential. You wake up carrying forward all the strength and wisdom you have accumulated, but you also wake up facing new challenges that require you to stretch beyond your current capabilities. I learned to see setbacks and failures not as evidence that I was losing my edge, but as invitations to discover new depths of resilience and adaptability. When age began to limit my physical abilities, I developed greater mental discipline. When isolation tested my emotional balance, I cultivated deeper spiritual resources. Every apparent ending became a new beginning in disguise. The eternal battle also involves continuously refining your understanding of what true victory means. In my youth, victory meant defeating external opponents. In my middle years, victory meant mastering myself. In my later years, victory meant serving something greater than myself. Each stage required different qualities and different approaches, but all were part of the same continuous journey. This evolution of understanding prevents the spiritual stagnation that often accompanies external success. Many warriors achieve their goals and then lose motivation because they mistakenly thought completion was possible. When you understand that the path itself is the destination, you maintain the energy and curiosity needed for lifelong growth. I practiced what I call the beginner's mind, approaching familiar activities with the freshness and attention of someone encountering them for the first time. This prevented the unconscious competence that can lead to carelessness and decline. Even in my 60s, I would practice basic sword forms with the same intensity I had brought to them as a teenager. The eternal battle requires accepting that there will always be aspects of yourself that need improvement, areas of knowledge where you remain ignorant, and skills that could be developed further. This is not discouraging, but liberating. It means you never have to be bored or feel that you have exhausted your potential for growth. Daily practice becomes a form of worship. Not worship of yourself or your achievements, but worship of the endless possibilities that exist within human potential. Each morning's training is an offering to the principle of continuous improvement, a demonstration of faith that effort applied with wisdom will yield results that serve not just yourself, but the larger good. I also discovered that the eternal battle involves constantly recommitting to your core principles and values. It is easy to compromise gradually over time, making small concessions to convenience or comfort that eventually erode the character you have worked so hard to build. The warrior must regularly return to his foundational commitments and renew his dedication to them. The morning practice of eternal battle includes asking yourself challenging questions. Where have I become complacent? What weaknesses am I avoiding, rather than addressing? How can I serve at a higher level today than I did yesterday? What new capacity can I develop that will make me more useful to others? This ongoing self-examination prevents the pride and stagnation that destroy many successful people. When you remain humble about how much you still have to learn, you stay open to instruction from unexpected sources. When you acknowledge your continuing limitations, you maintain the motivation needed for sustained effort. The warrior who embraces the eternal battle becomes like a mountain spring, constantly flowing, constantly fresh, constantly nourishing whatever it touches. This quality of perpetual renewal creates a presence that inspires others and a effectiveness that continues growing even as external circumstances change. Understanding that the journey never ends transforms every moment into an opportunity for practice and every challenge into a chance for growth. This perspective makes life endlessly interesting and meaningful, regardless of your age, circumstances, or previous achievements. Now, as my words reach across centuries to find you in this moment, I see in you the potential for a transformation that can begin today, with your next breath, with your next decision. Everything I have shared, the solitary path, the daily disciplines, the strategic thinking, the mastery of fear and adaptation, all of it has been preparing you for this single realization. You are already a warrior. You simply need to choose to live like one. The rising sun that greets you each. Morning is not just the beginning of another day, but the symbol of infinite renewal and possibility. Like that sun, you have the power to bring light to darkness, warmth to coldness, energy to stagnation. But unlike the sun, which rises according to natural law, you must choose to rise according to warrior principles. From this day forward, I challenge you to begin each morning as I began mine in those mountain caves, with absolute commitment to becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable than you were the day before. This is not about perfection, but about direction. This is not about never failing, but about never surrendering to failure. Implement immediately the daily practices I have shared. The morning meditation that creates inner stability, the physical training that builds unbreakable discipline, the strategic thinking that turns obstacles into opportunities, the study of human nature that gives you influence and understanding. Begin with small steps, but begin today. When you face your first challenge as a conscious warrior, remember that the sword you need is already in your hand. It is your trained will, your disciplined mind, your courage to act despite fear, your commitment to honor despite temptation. Every challenge you overcome makes you stronger. Every principle you uphold makes you more trustworthy. Every person you help elevates your own spirit. I see you in the modern world, facing battles I could never have imagined, battles fought with words instead of swords, strategies deployed in boardrooms instead of battlefields, honor tested by different temptations, but according to the same principles. The externals have changed, but the human heart that must be mastered remains exactly the same. You will face those who tell you that warrior principles are outdated, that honor is impractical, that discipline is unnecessary in a world of convenience and comfort. Do not listen to them. These voices come from those who have surrendered their own power to circumstances and want you to join them in weakness, rather than challenge them through strength. The legacy you will create begins with the warrior you become today. Every morning you choose discipline over comfort. You inspire others to do the same. Every time you keep your word despite cost, You strengthen trust in the world. Every moment you respond with wisdom rather than react with emotion. You add to the sum of human consciousness. I have taught you that the warrior's path is walked alone, but I also want you to know that you walk in the company of all who have chosen this way before you. Across time and culture, warriors have faced the same fundamental challenges of mastering themselves and serving something greater than themselves. You are part of this lineage now. Build your own book of 5 rings through daily practice and constant learning. Let your life become the teaching that guides others to their own mastery. What you master, teach. What you overcome, help others overcome. What you achieve, use to elevate those around you. The way of the warrior is not a destination you reach, but a path you walk. There will be days when you stumble, moments when you doubt, times when the old patterns of weakness tempt you back to comfort and mediocrity. In those moments, remember that the warrior's greatest strength is not never falling, but always getting back up. As the sun rises on your new life as a conscious warrior, carry forward these final words. Your circumstances do not determine your character, your choices do. Your past does not limit your future, your decisions do. Your fears do not define your capabilities, your actions do. Begin now. Begin today. Begin with this morning's first conscious choice to live as a warrior rather than as a victim of circumstance. The path I have shown you is proven through centuries of practice. The principles I have shared will serve you in any challenge you face. You have received the transmission. You hold the power. You know the way. Now walk it. The dawn of your warrior life begins with your next step forward.